Well, first of all, thank you so much for you all to inviting me to come and speak today. I'm so grateful. Thank you to Elizabeth and Andy for creating Inspired Leaders, and Tinja for you providing this beautiful space. I have not been in this building. It's just absolutely surprising when you go into a building that you haven't been in the Woodlands. You're like, wow, this is incredible. It's like you go in the woods and there they are, right? It's really just such a statement to our truly amazing community. So, and thank you for that nice introduction. So, of course, as Elizabeth said, a lot of y'all, I know a lot of faces in the room for different reasons. I also I was writing feverish notes on what a lot of you all do. I'm thinking I need a special needs trust. Oh my goodness, I need a seamstress because I have that dress. I'm thinking I'm scared of my subconscious and what I might find in there, but it's just amazing all the wonderful things that you guys do in our community. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to allow me to come and talk. A lot of people are familiar with Interfaith, and we're going to chat a little bit about Interfaith, but long before I was a part of Interfaith, I thought I would go back because what I found, especially when I'm talking to a group of leaders, and I know that before I was leading Interfaith, when I would see people in different positions, I would just assume they'd always been in those positions or that they had worked for 25 years within that career to get there. And there are a lot of people that have done that. But I've come a very non-traditional way to get to where I am. And it really comes back to hope, which is really crazy. You know, when I started thinking about what I would share with you and thinking about our life before Will, my son, got diagnosed, you know, it was probably very much like a lot of you all's. We had our challenges, everyday challenges. I was actually a stay-at-home mom 10 years ago with 3 boys under 5. I graduated from A&M, had worked in public relations for several years. As my husband said, we were dual income, no children, and was volunteering and working, started having babies, decided to stay home. And then there I found myself living in the Woodlands with 3 children under 5. And life was really good, or as good as it can be when you've got 3 crazy boys running around and 2 dogs. But and then as many people here, I'm sure have understood or have experienced that sometimes things in a blink of an eye can change, and that's exactly what happened for us. You often hear people talk about what's their defining moment, or when do you remember your life kind of flipping itself, you know? And I did not understand that for a really long time until we found out about Will. And so I thought it was really great to kind of start with this. If you imagine when we play this video, it's usually in a really dark room and the music's up really, really loud and it's super impactful. And I hope that what you saw, started with a really sweet little boy, and it really ended in community. And that's what our entire fight has been about. And so I'd like to start by sharing just a little bit about how we started and Will's diagnosis. So Will was 5. And we had moved to the Woodlands that summer of 2008, and everything was going around splendidly. We bought a house that we kind of felt, in my opinion, was going to be a house we lived in forever. I was like, the children are getting married in this backyard. It is just absolutely perfect. And we did a huge remodel on it. Again, I had like a 3-month-old at that time, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and life was good. And then around 5.5, which was in September, Ike had happened, if y'all remember back then. And all of a sudden, Will went from reading very normally. He was in kindergarten, so he had learned his letters. He was learning to read. But just one day, he started reading like this. You know, everything was like this. And so you think, okay, he needs glasses. No big deal. So we start taking him to optometrists. And the first couple optometrists said, you know, I can't get him to focus. He's a 5-year-old boy. He's all over the place. I think he's fine. But if you ever have that gut instinct that you know something more is wrong, I highly encourage you to trust it. And I just said, no, it's off. Something's off. Additionally, what had happened at that exact same time period, this is all within about 4 to 6 weeks, he had lost his alphabet. That means he had forgotten his alphabet. Well, we had a lot going on. We had moved. I'd had a baby. We had remodeled the house, and a hurricane hit all within 4 months. So I figured there's a lot happening in this little kid's life. You know, he's got a lot going on. We retaught him his alphabet, and I just figured we would, move forward. He was starting to read again, but still having that big issue with his eyes. And so we happened to get with a really great optometrist locally, and he said, I'm going to dilate his eyes. Well, what I neglected to tell you earlier was that, crazy enough, my dad had lost his vision to diabetes. My dad was a very big, strong, strapping man and had always supported our family. He was a kind of a tough, we're of mixed race and ethnicities. We're kind of mixed with all kinds of things. And so he was kind of like a big kind of Italian man that was constantly, on the verge of fighting somebody this first way and hugging somebody this way. And so when he lost his vision, it was a really big to-do, if you will, and it changed our entire quality of life. I was home at the time, and so I would take him to and from his appointments with his retinal specialist. And so I was very familiar, ironically, with the eye because of that. So when they wanted to dilate his eye, I said, why on earth would you be dilating a 5-year-old's eye? He said, I just want to take a look and make sure everything's okay. And he came out and said, Will has spots on the back of his macula, and that actually notes that he has something genetic going on. So I need to send you down to downtown, and you really need to have this checked out. He's got a genetic eye condition of some kind. So of course, immediately, as a mother, what's the first thing you think? Oh my gosh, my son's gonna go blind, right? If there's something wrong with his macula or his retina, it's gonna cause blindness. And at that time, for our sweet little boy who you saw in that picture with his big green eyes, and he was just one of the happiest children you'll have ever met, that was the worst thing I could think of that could ever possibly happen to him. We go downtown. We actually ended up, I went directly to my dad's doctor. Go figure, I had him on speed dial. And I said, they're saying he's got spots on his macula. I don't understand all of this. Do you mind just looking at him? And he took a look into his eyes without being dilated. And he said, he literally, I still remember, he sat there, he put his head down and he shook his head. And he said, you really need to be with a retinal genetic specialist. And it just so happens the most world-renowned one is in the office right across the hall. So let's get you into him. And that's just how it works around Houston because it's an amazing medical center, right? So he was at Baylor College of Medicine, and he said, I want you to meet with him. That man's name was Dick Lewis. I don't talk about Mr. Lewis a lot because while he is a wonderful physician, he has terrible bedside manner. And so slowly you'll see why I ended up cutting him out. But he did a really great job with diagnosis. And so we go in and he said, without question, he's got something. And so we're going to test him for 2 things. He's like, we're definitely going to test him for Stargardt's, which is juvenile macular degeneration. So you probably know somebody in your life that's older with macular degeneration, you know that they do go blind. So again, that kind of hits your heart like, my child's going to be blind. And then he said, is there any other symptoms that he's had other than the vision loss? And I said, the only thing is that he forgot his alphabet. I know that sounds crazy, but we had so many things going on. And, like a typical, you just make excuses. He's great. Otherwise, he's fine. I think he just needs glasses. I was still very much on, just give him a pair of glasses. That's all he needs. In complete and total denial that there was anything major. And he said, well, let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to test him for one other condition. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. It is, like I said, he bad bedside manner. He said it's a terrible condition. It's a horrific condition. It's a brain condition, not an eye condition. And but I don't want you to stress about it. And so I'm not even going to tell you the name, but I'm going to go ahead and test. He said, are there things that he should know that he doesn't know? I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Are there things, what does that mean? He's like, are there things that he should know that he just doesn't know? I have no idea what he's talking about. I said, I don't know what that means. He said, you'll know what it means if it happens. I kid you not, the next day we're sitting at the kitchen table, and Will, again, who at this point is 5.5, now actually he turned 6, and he said, hey Mom, can you get me one of those things that you eat with? A fork? Yeah, a fork. And I remember the hair on the back of my neck standing up. But I thought, okay, he's a 5.5-year-old boy. He's like half thinking about the dog and half thinking about his Transformers. Like, it's totally fine. And I moved on. So it took several months to get genetic testing. And in my head, I will be honest with you, I still thought this child needed glasses. So fast forward to June of 2009. My 2 older boys, then 6 and 4, were at science camp at the church. If you have children, I highly recommend it. They were off at church camp just for the day, and my baby was sleeping upstairs. And that dream home I talked to you about had a really great big backyard, and I used to go work out outside in the backyard, if you can imagine, in the middle of the heat. It was much crazier back then. And I ran inside to catch water, and the phone was ringing, and it's Texas Children's. They have a very distinct number. It's 824 numbers. And I thought, oh, it's Texas Children's. That genetics office does not know anything. They haven't found anything. We'll have to keep testing. And I picked it up, and I was so confident. And I said, hello. And she said, is this Missy Herndon, Will Herndon's mom? I said, yes, it is. Is this the genetics clinic? She said, it is. And I said, you didn't find anything, did you? And she started sobbing. The genetics counselor started crying. And I immediately knew something was really terribly wrong. And so she progressed forward, and she said, and I have it because I now realize it was the wording from the National Institute of Health. And she said, well, I'm so sorry to tell you that your son Will has tested positive for juvenile Batten disease. It's a rare, fatal, inherited disorder of the nervous system that begins in childhood. And I'll tell you, when she said fatal, I didn't catch that. It went right over my head. I just remember her saying degenerative brain condition. The first symptom is usually progressive vision loss in previously healthy children, followed by personality changes, behavioral problems, and slow learning. Children begin to have seizures, psychosis, and dementia. Movement and speech become lost. They begin having clumsiness and stumbling. They begin having Parkinson-like symptoms. They become demented. They become wheelchair-bound and then bedridden. And then I know she read the rest of this to me, but honestly, I was so out of it because at that point I had fallen to the ground, but that they die prematurely in the late teens or early 20s. Batten is always fatal. I remember her talking, but it's like an outer-body experience where I can still remember myself hitting the ground. Because, again, if you remember, the doctor had not told us the name of the condition, and all I could think of is, it's not Stargardt's. So it must be that brain condition she's talking about. I have a perfectly healthy child running around here that just needs glasses. And so I can remember trying to process everything, getting off the phone, calling my husband, asking him to rush home. I had to go pick up, it was time to pick up my other children. And I can still remember very foggy walking into the Woodlands United Methodist Church for science camp with a baby and a carrier, and seeing people, and people are talking and just like in a daze. And everybody's acting like everything's fine, like everything's not fine, like my life is over as I know it, and everyone's happy and talking. And then I get to Will's room and he shows up. And I can tell you from that point on, it took about 2.5 years for me not to cry when I saw Will. And so that night when I sat with my husband and we were going through, and I said, it says he's going to have all this stuff, but look, he's perfectly fine. Like kids that are in wheelchairs or bedridden, they start like that. They don't become that. I mean, he is totally healthy. And my husband said, Missy, you realize it's fatal. And then I will be honest, I totally lost it. It's like I couldn't believe that would happen. And so 2 days later, we took our kids down to the genetics clinic. That's how Texas Children's does it. They kind of give you a couple days to process what's going on in your life so that you can get there and have some clarity when you're asking your questions. And they start asking, now looking back, funny questions like, is it possible that you're related to your husband? I'm like, I don't think so, I don't think so. He's a redneck from the South and I'm from the North. There's just no way. No, there's no way. We start asking, all these random things of trying to connect us because it's such a rare genetic condition. So go figure, you each, whether you know it or not, carry about 1,500 recessive genes. So my husband and I both have this recessive gene that just happened that we got married. And then I kind of joked with them of like all 6 guys in your house I was in. I picked you, I picked your room, He doesn't think that's funny. I think it's hilarious, We were meant to be together. And then, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Well, you got to get your other children tested because they too could have it. And then that was the big one. Like, I could have 3 children. All 3 of my boys could have this condition. And so I went home that day, and it was a Thursday night. And I can remember thinking and looking at Wayne and saying, this is so much bigger than us. And if we're really ever going to do anything that's really going to make a difference, it's going to take more than just you and I doing it. We need the Lord, and we need Him like strongly. Like we need to step in. We need people to help and step in. And so I sent a prayer request out. And at the time, we didn't have social media like it is today. So I sent an email, and I can remember going through and handpicking people of my thousands of contacts because I had, at that point, I was a stay-at-home mom, but I was president of the junior league and had done lots of different volunteer things, sat on boards, and had been the Woodlands Lifestyles and Homes magazine social editor, which ironically, I'd covered hundreds of social events for years and years and years. So I had all those contacts. I was kind of picking like, they may not want to see this. And I'll be honest with you, in about an hour, I was like, screw it. I'm everyone. If you've ever met me in my life, you're getting this email. And I sent it out to all of these people. And then people started responding. I'm praying for Will. Have you heard of this family in Austin? I know of somebody with Batten disease. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? Because of course, as you all know, you live here, we live in a community of people of action. So like, what can we do? So we're thinking, well, I don't know, what can we do? Let's bring some people together. And so we kind of put out, if you will, a meeting, a call to action meeting of let's get together and see. Well, I had 80 women show up to that meeting, and they were from all walks of our life. They were church friends, junior league friends, preschool friends, and they're like, what are we gonna do? So ironically, between June 26th and that very first meeting, which was held the first week in August, We met with a family out of Austin. They had found out the year before us, and they had started a foundation called the Beyond Batten Disease Foundation. It so has happened that this guy was a CEO of a research company that basically did the lab testing for the most elite types of testing that needed to be done. So he had all these connections in the healthcare world and regulatory connections. It was like he was put on this earth to help us treat Batten disease. And his daughter was the exact same age as Will. And he said, what do y'all want to do? And I said, we want to start a foundation. He said, you can do that. But we've already started one. We have a PR company helping us. We are about to hire a chief research officer. So how about this? Let's join forces and go in together and do this together. And we agreed to that. And that was in July. The other thing he said is, I've been raising money now for, at that point, a year. And he said, so they had been given $500,000 in donations. And then they had a friend who had donated $2 million. Because at this point in the state of Batten disease, there was no research happening. Okay? Children were dying. That's what was happening in Batten disease. And we knew that we didn't have that much time. In the world of drug discovery, it takes usually anywhere from 12 to 15 years from the start of a drug to actually getting it into a person with FDA approval, and anywhere from $15 to $20 billion. Okay, we didn't have years, and we did not have that kind of money. So we went in with a strategy, a really strong strategy of, if we're going to do this, we've got to get the right team of researchers who are not only dedicated to coming up with a discovery, but that actually want to get it to the point where it goes into children. Because just in general, most researchers, they want to be published. It's just the way that academia is. Well, that's wonderful for them, but we want our children healed. So from the very beginning, we knew we'd have to find a team that was willing to do that. And so we went down, and this is where I want to share, and I've got a couple of, like, if you will, lessons that I've learned in all of this process that we're going to discuss at the end. But one of those things is, if you don't believe that there is a master plan for you, I encourage you to wake up, because there is. And whether you believe it or not, and even the challenges that you've been through, or the curveballs, it's all a part of how it's supposed to be. And I truly and firmly believe that. And I have seen it happen with this condition. And so he goes down to Texas Children's. He says, I have $2.5 million. I want to start a lab for Batten disease. And the head of the Neurological Research Institute at that time, they were just getting it built. It's the only research institute in the whole world dedicated to degenerative and neurological conditions for children. It was a year out from being completed, but they were bringing research groups here. And her name is Dr. Huda Zogby, and she said, well, let me look and see. She knew that there wasn't a lot going on, but she thought, this is a parent. He wants to start something. He's got this other family with him. Let's give it an opportunity. She starts looking around and realizes, as expected, there's nothing. So she was firmly prepared to come back and say to him, you know what, there's just nothing. And then the day before she planned to do that, she was meeting with a group of Italian researchers that came over with a treatment for Huntington's disease. And they're explaining exactly what that treatment is. And she said, it was like a light bulb went in my head and said, you know what? I think this might work on Batten disease. So we came together. We used that $2.5 million to bring that team of researchers over from Italy. And they started the second week in August of 2009. So when we had that meeting, I was able to say, we have a research team, and now we need to figure out how to fund them. Because we have $2.5 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but in the lab, it goes like that. And remember, no one else is doing anything. And that research team, and what's really amazing about them is the person who heads that team, his name is Marco Sordilio. When Marco was young, he had a really extreme heart condition, and he was only expected to live to be 9 or 10 years old. He lived in a small village in Italy. His parents did fundraising. They were able to get him into a clinical trial. The trial comes, takes on 10 children. All children died but him. One child survived, Marco. And Marco said, when I grow up, I'm gonna heal children. That's what I want to do. And then go figure. He gets put on this small disease that at that time nobody had ever heard of. But there was money associated, and he had a discovery, and he said, I'm willing to take it on. You have to remember, all of our kids at that point were 5 and 6 years old. And so he said, he looked at him and he goes, I'm willing to take it on. And so they started researching, and we started fundraising. And we started with our very first event. It was Hope Under the Stars. We called it Under the Stars because we were literally under the stars. We were at the park in Creekside, the Village of Creekside Park. We had no money to start with, and so it's like, and every bit we raised was going to research. So we basically said, we are selling tickets, and our goal is for you to come and have a good time, but everything you're doing, eating, drinking, sitting on, is donated, so just bear with us. And so we did the event for $6,000 and raised $220,000 that very first year. Everything was just incredibly donated. The second year, the weather didn't cooperate as well. It was really just incredibly chilly November weekend night. It was about 30 degrees, Jen, isn't that about right? 30 degrees, and everyone's drinking frozen margaritas because they were donated. And I was like, we're wrapping this up and we're moving this indoors next year. And then we also started our Hope on the Green golf tournament, and that's how our fundraising began. I know it sounds crazy, and we were just kind of, I think, crazy enough. We were so driven because I knew that if we had chosen to do nothing, then Will would die. I knew that if we chose to do something, he still may die, but at least he has a chance. And that's what kind of started us on this path. You know, we used to say failure is not an option. We would say that constantly. Failure is not an option. His life depends on it. And I would tell every single person that I would meet that. In those early years, you know, I didn't work full time yet. And so I spent my days basically sharing hope. I would wear bracelets, and I still do every day. I wear 2 bracelets. I keep one and I give one every day for 10 years. I find someone to give a bracelet to and share Will's story. And my husband does the same. And we have a lot of people in the community that now do it as well, or wear their bracelets, which is really very sweet to see. It all started with that committed group of people that chose to stand with me. I can remember being at an event for Texas Children's, and Will's neurologist was speaking, and he's actually the head of chief of pediatric neurology at Texas Children's, and he's now going to lead. He will end up leading our clinical trial, and we were sitting, and he was up there talking, and I had several of my friends, the ladies that organize all these events that just are like family now. Many of them don't work full time. They volunteer full time. I'm so grateful, and I always said I couldn't afford them if they did ask me to pay them. They're just amazing. And I remember sitting up there with them, and we were watching Dr. Clark speak, and he said, you know, in the history of degenerative brain conditions, there's never been a cure. There's never been a treatment for a degenerative brain condition. And in my head, I remember thinking, well, he doesn't mean never. I mean, in the history of all these conditions, there's no way. And you know when you can feel your friends kind of staring a hole through you, like, what in the hell have you gotten me into? You not only do we not know anything about research, you pick a disease that has no chance in the world of a cure, and they were staring at me, and I was like, they don't mean that. They don't mean that. Like, he doesn't mean that, I swear. Come on, let's go talk to him afterwards. And we walked up, and I said, Dr. Clark, and I'm kind of doing the eye like, you know, my friends are kind of concerned because you said there's no treatment, but there is some treatment out there. And he said, no, there's not. But do you know how many diseases were incurable before someone took them on and became advocates to find a cure? All of them. He said, at some point, every disease will have a cure. Every degenerative brain disease will have a cure. Why can't that disease be the first? And that's what really just spurred us on, because I thought, why not? So I do want to share, though, because I'm sure you all see this in your businesses too, that not everyone believed. I had a lot of people that I would start telling them, and they would just glaze over, or, oh, good luck with that, you know. Wait, do you have a research background? I'm like, I have no science background. I mean, I barely made it through A&M, and thank God I did not have science. I did journalism way on the other side of the campus with no classes on Friday. It worked out for me, it's okay, but no science background, nothing like that. I don't need a science. I've got experts in science, but I can fundraise and I can build awareness, because who else can do it better than his mother, right? And that's how it kind of started. I can remember sitting at his pediatrician's office, and we were a year in, and I can remember I was inviting her, and she said, do you really think any of this is going to make a difference? And I said, well, I wouldn't bring my family and my friends and ask them to give money and their time if I didn't. And she kind of scoffed, like, you've got a really difficult disease. I don't know if that's where you should be putting your time and resources. And I said, okay. So I stood Will up, and we've done this multiple times now, and said, you know what, you don't believe. And if you don't believe there's a future for him, then he doesn't belong here. And we walked out, and we found a new pediatrician. She's since come back and apologized for that statement and has been very supportive. So, and I have to say that was probably one of the most wonderful moments, to turn a non-believer into a believer, right? The same thing with his eye doctor. I would go in every year and say, we're getting closer to a trial, and I'm so excited because this medicine's going to slow his progression. And is there any stem cell treatments that could possibly, I would love for him to be able to see again. And finally, about 3 years ago, he stopped me and he goes, Ms. Herndon, this child has a disease that is in every single cell of his body. There's no getting better for him. He's not going to see again. He's not going to be able to do these things that you're talking about. And I can remember, and he did it in front of Will. And I can remember going, okay, and Phil's tears in my eyes, and I got Will's hand. I said, Will, we're leaving? And I said, remember his name's Richard Clark, but he goes by something else, and I said, goodbye, Dick, and I left. I did, straight up. My husband's like, I cannot believe you did that. I was like, that is straight up truth. I mean, you don't talk like that. You don't do that to families. You don't do that to families with hope. And even if you don't believe, it's not your job to make me hopeless. It's your job to fix my child. And we changed, and now we have a really wonderful eye doctor. And I can go on and on about the people that didn't believe. You're always going to have people that don't believe in what you're thinking that you should be doing, or in an adventure that you want to go on, or a new business that you want to start. There's always going to be those people. Don't listen to those people, because I would imagine there's just as many people around you that were going to pump you up and believe in you. And I'm really grateful that I have a lot of those people around me. A lot of people say, like, how are you doing all this? You're juggling hope, you've got interfaith and all these other things. It's because I've got a really great team of people all around me that help me and that support in every single thing that we do. So we built a brand very inadvertently. We shared initially for a golf tournament that a bunch of the girls wore, and then all of a sudden people are like, are you selling those shirts? It's like, well, sure, we have extra shirts. You can buy one for $20 or whatever. And next thing we know, we got shirts and bracelets and necklaces and hopes and jackets and cardigals, and got a wonderful volunteer that just loves doing that, and she created a brand around hope. And when you see hope out and about, I hope that you'll remember that it's about Will. It's all about saving Will. And then we did a lot of fundraising, and we just continue to fundraise and fundraise and fundraise until it got to a point where I was about 4 years in, where I realized, you know what, I've been fundraising for a really long time. I've tapped out about everybody I know, and every person that my friends know, and I'm really in a tough spot. And I remember praying, saying, I'm in a tough spot, because in order to make this go bigger, I need more people. And how do I get to that point? I don't know. I'm at a loss. And so also learned early on, this disease takes control out of your life. I was a control freak before. I feel like that's God's sense of humor. Like, ha ha ha, you think you're in control of your life? You're not. Good luck. Okay, I'm gonna hand you this. And then you're like, everything's spinning out of control. And so I just remember taking it up and saying, help me out here and tell me what to do. Well, talk about ashes. Ironically, my husband lost his job about 6 weeks later. And I had not worked in years, full time. I had done all kinds of volunteer stuff, and I loved my life doing hope and volunteering and taking care of my children. And my husband said, it was about a month later, he goes, I've been out looking, and I think you're going to have to go back to work. And I said, well, whenever would I work? I'm so busy volunteering. And that's truth. He did not like that answer. He was like, I need you to get your resume together. I think that you should. I'm probably not going to get a job for a few months, and insurance is a big deal, we have with Will's situation. So I said, okay. So I put my resume together. That was literally years and years of volunteer service work, leadership positions in volunteering, but volunteering nevertheless. And I showed it to him, and he looked at it and he said, okay, are you serious? Because it's all your volunteer stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's all I've been doing. He goes, well, what do you want to do, PR? And I said, not right now. I think I really want to do what I've been doing, which is work in the community. And he goes, well, good luck trying to find a job that pays you to do that. I showed him. Ironically, that following week, I was sitting with Ann Snyder, who at that time was president and CEO of Interfaith, because I was chairing an event, because I was doing a lot of volunteer work there. And she said, well, I don't know if you know anybody, but we are looking for a director of programs and services. And I went, oh, what do they do? She said, well, it's kind of like your job in the league, except for it's, of course, more intense, but you oversee everything that we do in the community. And I was really familiar with Interfaith at that time, loved Interfaith, loved spending my time there, knew all the great, wonderful work that Interfaith did, helping people and providing service. And so I said, well, is it full-time? Because I was kind of thinking I would do something while the kids were in school. And she said, oh, it's very full-time. I'm not interested. She said, okay, well, just be thinking about it. Maybe you could tell some of your friends. I said, okay. So I get home that day. Don't say anything to Wayne about it. And on Sunday, Wayne said, hey, any progression on the resume and the job? Because it's been a week. And I'm like, are you still on that? Are you serious right now? He said, I am. I said, okay, well, actually, I did talk to Ann about a position, but it's really full-time. And he goes, well, that's what people do, Missy. They work full-time. And I said, oh, okay. Well, let me go and talk to her. So straight up truth. So Monday, I go talk to her after hours, and she starts telling me, and I'm like, well, I think I could do that, or I could do that. And next thing I know, 1 month later, after Will's Make-A-Wish trip, I am sitting in my office with 20 people reporting to me. I'd never had an employee report to me. 20 people reporting to me. I'd had hundreds of volunteers. My husband said it should be easier. Employees have to do what you ask them to do. You're paying them. That is not the truth. I was like, you are wrong. And I'm sitting there thinking, what am I doing? You know, what am I doing? I'm in a social service agency, like the social service agency of the Woodlands. How did I get here? I mean, am I going to have time for hope? Am I going to have time to do all these things? So I went that week to a chamber event with Ann. And we had separated, we were talking to people. People were very kind, welcoming me to my new job. And somebody walked up and said, hey, don't you have a foundation for your son as well? And I can remember the hair kind of standing up in the back of my neck, and I said, I do, because I was very careful at that point, because now I'm working at 2 different nonprofits, basically. You gotta be really careful at that. And so I had been made very clear with Ann that I would never bring it up, because that's just something, a pact that I made. I would never bring it up, but if people asked me, I would talk about it, and that was agreed upon. And so I said, well, I do. May I give you a bracelet, and you can go to the website and you can see all about it. I said, yeah, can we go for coffee? I'd love to learn more about Will. And I remember literally walking out of there in tears thinking, the Lord has answered my prayers, because now I have the opportunity to share Will's message with all these people in the business world that, quite frankly, I would never, ever have had the opportunity to do if I hadn't been put in that position. And I loved interfaith. You know, its perspective is such an interesting thing. You know, when I was at home, everything was about my kids and basically Will getting sicker and sicker. I focused on every single thing. I mean, poor Will couldn't look to the right and, oh my gosh, his vision's gone to his right. Now he can't see. Oh, now that's not a good sign. My hope bracelet fell off. I would take these signs really seriously. I just dwelled on the future. I dwelled on every single day of what life would be like when Will couldn't walk or he couldn't talk, or what that would be like. I was so just really enthralled in a really terrible way, obsessed with life without Will, even though Will was perfectly well still standing next to me. And so when I went to Interfaith, all of a sudden I saw a whole world of problems. It's people that can't pay their rent, people that can't feed their children, people that are losing their jobs. And I remember thinking, how dare me, like in my world, for me, yes, this is huge. Baton is huge. But on a regular day, we're good. I can take care of my family. My kids are relatively healthy and happy despite what Will's conditions are. How dare me be so small-minded, because gosh, the world is really big and there's a lot happening out there. And what happened is the longer I worked at Interfaith, the smaller and smaller Will's issues became. And I truly believe that because Will had to be more independent because I wasn't there as much, it made him a more independent and stronger person who did not act sick. We never treated him sick, not one day of his life, and never have and never will. That's not our plan. And because of that positivity that I talked about, making sure that every single person that's around him is positive and loving and happy, and it's all about light, I now have a 16-year-old that's like that, which is pretty amazing, who's untouched by negativity because it's never around him. We joke he never gets in trouble because he never does anything wrong. My boys will go, well, you didn't yell. Well, my girl didn't do anything. And then they're like, that's right, we didn't. I mean, even my other boys are just enthralled with the innocence and purity of how Will is. And I believe it's because I didn't come home and dwell on the fact that maybe Will was having a tough time today, because you know what? I saw something really terrible at work today. And gosh, we really are blessed, because God knows that it could be so much worse. If you ever think you're having a bad day, come visit. It's actually a really happy, amazing place at Interfaith, but it puts a lot of perspective in your life. There's a lot of really wonderful people. And so I will tell you that I was a couple months in, and as those get to know me, and I want to check my time, make sure I'm not, okay. As those people that get to know me, you'll see one is I'm a total serial dieter. That's why I made the joke about my thing popping out. And my diet is very much based upon the way my life is. And so if I am working out really heavy, then I'm eating like a regular person. And if I'm not working out, then I eat like nothing. And so, and I started work, it was just, you know, I was added 40 to 60 hours worth of work a week. I was still handling Hope, still had my children's situation, you know, working, being a part of everything that my kids are doing. And my husband did start a business, and that went well, which was great. And so we were feeling a little bit better, but I remember thinking, I'm really tired. You know, I'm halfway in this, been doing this for now about 5 years. I'm really, really tired. When is the cure coming? I have been raising money and doing awareness, and while everyone else is at home with their families, you know, we're at a Hope event, or we're planning an event, or we're thanking a sponsor, or we're thanking a donor. When is our reward coming? When is this child going to be cured or healed? Every day I'd wake up and I'd look at him and he'd smile and say something, because oftentimes these children will be perfectly fine one day and then the next day just make a downhill slide. And Will would say something and I would say, okay, he's good today. And so I'd send him off to school. And then Wayne would pick him up at school and he'd go, he's good. And we do that every day. because you just don't know when a psychosis or dementia will set in with these children. And I remember thinking, I'm really tired. I'm really, really tired. My friends have been just absolutely amazing, but gosh, how long are they going to support? How long are these donors going to keep giving? At that point, they'd given millions and millions of dollars, and we're still waiting for this trial. And so I, in true fashion, decided to run a half marathon because, I mean, who does that? But we did because we had a team running for hope, and I had not trained, and I had not eaten for really about 6 weeks. And I just remember being like, I was doing this for hope. I was running a marathon with several people, a half marathon with several people, and I was very anxious about it because I blamed, if you will, Batten for every bad thing that at that time happened in my life. So I was like, damn you, Batten, you know, I hate running, and now I'm running a half marathon because of you, and I don't even know where my running shoes are the morning of the race, and I haven't eaten, so I'm not filled up, so I'm like throwing carbs in my mouth, and I was very just in a really kind of deep, dark place. And we started the race, and there's meaning here, that's why I'm telling you, because it goes back to the plan. And I was running this race, and I kept thinking, you know what I'm going to do? I was running with a team of people, and they all had Hope shirts on, and they were all raising money for Hope. It's the only reason why I would run a half marathon, by the way. I'm not a runner, although I love people that do run, so congratulations to you guys that do that stuff. And we were running the race, and I remember thinking, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the town center area, and then I'm going to run out to right by where my house is, which is like Cochran's Crossing, St. Anthony area, and then there is no way in this whole world I can make it down Kirkendall, because I mean my mind was just in that place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to venture out. I'm going to leave my team. I'm going to go get my kids. I'm going to meet them at the finish line and cheer them on. So I'm going to get them started. That was my master plan. So as I was thinking, if I even make it the 6.5 miles there, well, that's going to be really something. So I start running, and I kind of looked up, and because I'm talking and laughing and we're having fun because it's all Hope people and everyone's really sweet and fun at Hope. And I look, and I'm at mile 3, and I'm like, I can't believe I ran 3 miles. I haven't done anything for 10 weeks, I haven't eaten any. I mean, this is crazy. Keep running, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a mile out from St. Anthony. I am so excited in my head. And I get to St. Anthony, and I said, remember I told you I was going to cut out? Well, I'm cutting out here. And they're running, and they're like, you can't cut out now. We're halfway through the race. And I'm like, no. Remember my plan? My plan was to cut out. Like, if you go right there, my house is like I could like throw a stone if I could throw that high at my house. Like, I could see the rooftop of my house. I said, please, I can't run the rest of this. I didn't prepare for this. I don't want to do this. And my friends were like, you've done all this. All these people are expecting you to run. You're doing it for Hope, blah, 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 blah. And next thing I know, I'm running down Kirkendall. Well, if you've ever done the half marathon here, Kirkendall is very desolate. There's nobody cheering, because that's part of it too, is you're like, I have to cheer because all these people, I have to run because all these people are expecting you to be running by them, and they're cheering and they're waiting out there, so then you're like gasping for air, and then you get by the run station, then if you have to walk, you walk for a minute, and then you get up. But that's not how it is at Kirkendall. Kirkendall is just completely desolate. And I remember thinking, I'm never going to make it down. Great, this is exactly what I didn't want to be doing. And I'm talking to myself. Do y'all talk to yourselves, or is it just me? Talking to myself. And I'm listening to KSPJ in my ear, and I can feel myself getting upset. And as I was running down, all of a sudden, I don't know how it happened, I looked up, and I was totally by myself. And I could see my friends, because we were all in the same shirt, and they were really far ahead. And I looked behind, and there was nobody behind me. And there had been a crew. I mean, there was tons of people. You know how the marathon is. I remember thinking, this is my worst nightmare. Now I'm running down Kirkendall all by myself. I've got nobody around. And what did I start doing? I started griping to God about Batten, because that's what I do. And I mean, literally, like, this beautiful inspirational songs in my ear, and I'm like, oh my, I hate running, and now I'm running for Batten, and now I'm by myself, and I'm on Kirkendall, and it's exactly what I want to be. I haven't prepared for this race. I don't want to finish this race. I want to scoot out. We are halfway done. Like, I am over this. Like, I am so tired. I want to get back to my normal life before all this happened. How can I get there? Like, why? A lot of whys. And then as clear as day, and I remember it was a very cool morning, and the trees down Kirkendall were just, they're situated so beautifully, and the sun started shining through. It was as if the sun was shining like right in my eyes. And so I looked up into the area, seeing and thinking for just a moment. I stopped my griping and thought, gosh, that's really beautiful. It's really pretty. And I heard a voice that said, you are halfway there. You weren't prepared for the journey to begin with, but you're here, and look how far you've come. You have to keep going. You aren't alone, and these are like verbatim words. You are not alone in this. You've got people all around you that are supporting you. You're almost there. Keep running. Just keep running. And I remember being so almost overtaken by it that when I kind of came out of what I felt like was a zone, I looked up, and my friends were about 6 feet in front of me. How I made it down Crookendale Road, I'm telling you, I think that the Lord lifted me and just carried me down the road, because there's no way I ran it. And when I got there, I was very upset. They turned around, I said, why did y'all run? Why did y'all go so fast and leave me? And they said, we didn't. You slowed down. I said, I didn't slow down. You ran ahead faster. They're like, we didn't. Look, you caught up to us. It's fine. What's wrong with you? It's like, I had a moment, And then I ran in and we finished the race. And it was kind of what I needed to propel me into the next 5 years to get through where we are now. And so where we are now, and how did I get into this whole position with Interfaith, is really crazy, because when I started with it, and still keeping up with all this hope stuff that we've been doing, which kind of for me had been a full-time job previously, and said, I'd like to have an internal candidate. I'm going to be retiring from Interfaith, and I'd like to have somebody here. And I think that would be you. I'd like to mentor you. And so she started mentoring, and she is a really wonderful mentor. And as we got closer and closer to the time of her announcement, and then whenever they started putting a call out for jobs, I thought, I don't think this is for me. It's kind of taking me away from what I really feel like I need to be doing, which is focusing on my children and my husband and my family and hope. It's going to require more hours and more time, and I just don't know if that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And so in my head, I had actually decided not to apply for the position, and which is kind of crazy. I've never said that publicly, but I didn't. And I just thought, because I want to make sure that I do a service to Interfaith. I only have so much bandwidth, and I've got a lot of things I'm juggling, and I want to make sure that I give it exactly what it needs, and it needs someone's full attention. And so I made this decision, and on a Friday, and I was going to express to the board on Monday that I was not going to apply. And on Sunday, I was sitting in my living room, and I really wanted to go to church, and none of my children would cooperate, or my husband. Don't tell Susan I said that. But nobody would cooperate. And I'm like, I need to be at church today. Like, I need my spirit cup filled. I need to be at church. And nobody would get up. And I said, fine, forget it. Here's the deal. I'm going to sit here on this couch. I'm going to eat my egg whites, and not one of y'all talk to me while I listen to Joel. And so I sat down and started listening to Joel Osteen, his 10 o'clock service. Sitting there listening, and he's going back and forth. And he starts telling a story about a man, and I know I should really know this, so forgive me that I don't know all my Bible stories properly in the names. Basically, it was about a man who had a son he had lost, and he was traveling to another town, relocating his family, in the Bible, of course. And it was about that he was, the Lord told him to go to this certain town to fulfill his destiny, if you will. And along the way, there was a town by the name of his son, so he stopped there to visit, and he liked it. He said, this is okay, I could live here. And so he stayed there. And he never got to where his destination was, because he himself made the decision, didn't listen to God, but made his own decision. I remember sitting there thinking, and of course it initially caught my attention because he talked about the son that had passed. And then this story, and I thought, that's a very interesting, timely story for me with everything that's going on. And then that same voice that I heard when I was running through the marathon spoke and said, I have created a destiny for you that right now you are choosing not to do. You need to do what I'm telling you to do. This is your path. This is your journey. I'm creating opportunity more than you could ever foresee if you just follow my lead. And if you can imagine, what's crazy is my poor husband, when he eventually woke up, I said, so interestingly enough, I had this crazy experience on the couch, so I'm going to go ahead and apply for that position. And he's like, what are you talking about? We decided. I'm like, I know, I feel like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I never looked back. And so I did apply, and was really grateful that I was really granted the really honor and privilege of being put into the opportunity over at Interfaith. So a lot of people don't realize is Interfaith of the Woodlands is actually the largest nonprofit in Montgomery County, and it's a $26 million nonprofit. We have 450 employees in 18 locations of different things that we do, all very community-based. So it's a very large job, much more than just a food pantry or crisis assistance, which most people know us for. So it's a very, very big job. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of sat in my office the very first day going, what have I done? Oh my goodness, this is so much. How am I going to do it all? But it just kind of has all worked out. And then you fast forward to today. So here I am. I've been in my role at Interfaith for 3 years. So my role has afforded me a lot of really great opportunities to meet a lot of really amazing people. But most of all, what it's shown me, and I think that for me this is probably the most interesting is and dynamic is Interfaith was put in the Woodlands to build community. It's its sole purpose. George Mitchell created it to build community through service, to bring the people together, to bring congregations, corporations, the individuals, all of our member congregations, which are 63 of those, all to come together in the name of serving others, okay? What you saw in that video, and the video I'm about to show you, is how ironic is it, something that was created 45 years ago for a completely different mission, those people, that mindset of giving back and serving others is what has propelled and gave the momentum to actually find a cure for Will. That is crazy, right? That this thought that a group of people can come together and actually make a difference is all possible because of like-minded people that live right here in this community that stood with us and said, you know what, it may sound impossible, but everything is possible. Believe in the unseen. And so with that, that's kind of where we are. And so I want to take, just got about 4 more minutes. Where's Elizabeth? Elizabeth, is that okay? I'm sorry, is 4 minutes okay? Yeah. Okay, because I know y'all usually end about 1. I'm going to show you this video. This is Will today, and you'll kind of see where our efforts are, and then I'll close real quick. It's just a little over a minute.
Lions. Giraffe. A gorilla.
Remember, he can't see. He's lost his vision, so he knows everything by feel. So we call it the beginning because now we sit on the most promising discovery in the history of Will's condition because of the work that's been done right here in this community. It's really amazing to think. And not only is it going to help the several hundred kids that have Batten disease in this country, but the far-reaching effects on Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington's, and ALS is truly amazing. They're testing it in the mice right now, and mostly for Parkinson's, which is just incredible. It's crazy to think that something that was really created, quite frankly, between Austin for Christian, who's the child there in the Woodlands, which is Will, created for 2 children, may have the effect to change the quality of life for millions of adults, and all because people chose to care in something that was completely and totally impossible. So I'm going to leave you with this. And it's interesting because yesterday I was at a speaker in Mac McInville was speaking with his daughter who's battling mental health illness. And it's just an amazing, if you ever get the opportunity to hear her speak. And he got up there and he said this, and I was telling Jen, oh, what a great way to close. He was talking about that he had heard a rabbi speak whose father had also been a rabbi during Auschwitz and during the Holocaust, and they were living off of margarine. They were in hiding and living off of margarine. And when they went to light the menorah for the first night, the father used margarine, the only margarine that they had that they were eating off of, and the child got very upset, saying, "Why would you give away our food? Why would you put the food in the menorah? That's all we've got left." And the rabbi said, "My child, we know you can live 3 days without water. You can live 33 weeks without food, but you cannot live 1 minute without hope." And I can tell you, for us, that is a very true statement. And I know hope means a lot of different things to a lot of people. And a lot of y'all may not be able to understand this particular battle, but I do believe that every single one of us is fighting some other battle and some other challenge, whether that's a sickness or a marriage issue or a job. We all have those challenges. So I would highly encourage you to, when you meet people, remember that. Remember how much kindness matters and how incredible believing in something, believing what your friends are doing, what a big difference that can make. I can tell you, for us, if we did not have the effort that we call hope every single day, our lives would be very, very different, and we would be in a very, very dark place. But because of this effort, Will has the opportunity for light and life, and a very long life, if we can get this medicine into him. So you'll all know when that happens, because we're supposed to be in clinical trial this summer, and believe me, I'm going to blow up social media with my little Will actually getting this treatment, because we've been working so hard on it. But I do thank you so much for the opportunity to come and speak and share our story, and just encourage you to keep believing in hope. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. You're very sweet.